is the burning of the Library of Alexandria, because the Library of Alexandria symbolizes the teachings that had been accumulated, maps. We're talking about, maps, diagrams, histories of the rise and fall of early human civilizations. We wonder about where did, the pyramids, or where did all these amazing megalithic structures, where did they come from? And most people subscribe to...
Listen, in a world of economic uncertainty, safeguarding your retirement savings is more important than ever. Gold is a trusted store of value, providing stability for centuries through countless market cycles. With a gold IRA from Noble Gold Investments, you can protect your financial future with the enduring power of precious metals. Vote for the timeless safety of gold and silver in 2024 and get up to 10 1-ounce silver Trump coins or a 10-ounce silver American flag bar with a qualifying account. Noble Gold Investments, your partner in financial peace of mind in 2024. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here, and my wonderful co-host for the Naked Truth Show, Frank Jacob. How's it going, brother?
Good to be here, brother. It's good to see you back on your feet. It's been quite an adventurous few weeks, I think, for you especially. Maybe not in the most pleasant way. For me, it's been intense as well, but on another level, different sort of area. But it has to do, with consciousness and workload and deadlines, and just trying to deal and cope with this incredible onslaught of craziness and information that's happening.
Dude, I was dealing with a different deadline, not gonna lie, but it's much better now. I want to say something, and we're going to talk about it later in the show. But before we logged on, I was getting halfway through your third part of the new webinar. Holy moly! So I was watching it, kind of tuning into how people might feel watching this, and this is going to positively trigger the hell out of people. And really beautifully done. Lots of facts, lots of documents. Love it. But it is gonna blow your minds in terms of what you think history is and what it actually is, especially World War II and onward. So just want to say great job on that. Can't wait to finish it and for people to see it. But Frank, before we go into all of that in the webinar, what's the craziness you're talking about? What's been on your mind?
Well, I just, you get a lot of messages from people that are saying they just can't take it anymore. It's up to here. They don't want to hear any more information. What you're finding is, and then for me, I don't have that much time to kind of cruise around and just sort of see what's out there. I usually have a pretty solid direction that I'm going in. I'm thankful for that, actually, because it keeps me focused on just, high level information, high level thinking. It keeps my brain at a certain frequency level so I don't get caught up in it, but I can sympathize with it, and when you go out there, you kind of see it. And I just, for example, I always, of course, keep a little tabs on what you're doing, and it also comes into my feed. And then I see stuff that you're talking about that is just totally on cue, with, the idea of this whole awakening movement being kind of subverted, trustable people that turn out to be totally phonies, or they turn into absolute sellouts, right? And we're at this stalemate or something. I don't know how to describe it. It's just that's the word that came to mind. And when I was thinking about that the other day, it was why, and you're mentioning in the third part that it's going to trigger people, right? Because the truth should trigger people. And I spent so much time, the reason it took me so long is because of all the fact checking, because I know it's trigger heavy information. And so you got to be absolutely double and triple sure that what you're presenting is truthful and can be verified, and for people to springboard off of it and find their own, they can take your sources and they can do their own research. But that, doing that, I was thinking, man, it's a little bit crazy, because I know, some of this information, if it's misconstrued, can put you into a very compromised situation, right? So I had this analogy come to my mind, and it reminded me of an old film. And that would kind of represented how I felt when I released it.
Okay.
Now I'll put it up on the screen. Give you a screenshot, and I think you'll recognize right away what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
You know
Yeah,
that scene, right?
love the movie. One of my favorites.
Right? I'm talking about the film Dances with Wolves, and there's this famous opening scene where John Dunbar, obviously, right, played by Kevin Costner. You know, there's a whole lead up to it. Like he's sitting there, you know, his leg's about to be chopped. He pulls away and he goes and meets with his buddy. He says, "What's going on?" Like, and they're sitting in this battle. They're facing each other off in this battlefield in St. David's Field in Tennessee, right? And the guy says, "Oh,
My
you
home
know,
state.
yeah, there you are." Then you have this. He says, "Oh yeah, there's the major. He's busy trying to figure out." Let me see if I remember the line. Something about how come the officer's mess ran out of peach ice cream. And in the background, you see you see the generals up on the hill. They're there for the show, but there is no show, right? And then so John Dunbar gets on his horse and says, "You know what? I'm done with this. I'm just gonna, you know, I've got to break the stalemate." And he risks his life literally, and everyone thinks he's committing suicide. And he rides across that line, and somehow the grace of the universe, you know, they want to use him in that moment as a tool for just everyone sit up and take notice, right? And he obviously makes it through, and you know the end of the story is because everyone's on the other side focusing on him, they don't notice that, you know, his team jumps and takes the opportunity to jump in, and you know, and then they win the situation, right? They go and the battle's over, right? So I kind of feel like what we're at right now.
Frank, wait. Something tells me you're trying to tell us something. You're just not trying to reminisce a good movie scene. What are you trying to tell us?
What I'm trying to say here, John, is that I think that we have to be John Dunbar, all of us that are in the awakening scene. We can no longer hide behind the barricades in a stalemate, which is where we're at right now. You know, the one side thinks the white hats have already won. It's all over. You know, the Ashtar command is rolling in. The ships. I even saw a post today. Someone put a picture of the spaceship up there, saying, "Oh, here's a spaceship of the docking," and blah blah blah. Right, and it's just like there's the stalemate. And nobody's putting any skin in the game. And Dunbar put the total skin in the game in that scene. And I think it's getting to the point where we need to take risks on that level. Maybe not risk your life, but listen, when
what
you
do
put
you
out
mean
information
risk
like
your
this,
life, dude? We're risking it all. Plus, I see a meme coming, dear viewers. Be like John Dunbar. I see that meme coming, Frank. I think you started something, but man, you're so correct in that. I just want to chime in a little bit because
yes,
we're in this. Oh my God, it is so tiring in this polarity game where the polarizing voices are being amplified. They're giving like minutia of the actual picture, just a tiny fraction of the actual picture, and everybody's like, yeah, and then the next person, no, fuck you, and they're just fighting each other, not realizing.
right.
And here's the buried lead for this entire show, my friends. Everyone, every group on earth, all peoples, all religions are being controlled by the same hidden hand. And that hidden hand is neither Jewish nor Christian nor Democrat or Republican, doesn't care about any of these boxes. It only cares about divide and conquer. That's what it does. That's the buried lead. So we sympathize with all people of the world, even especially those who are completely misguided and misled, right? But you're so right. So what does that mean to you to have skin in a game? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, in my case, you know, it had a direct correlation to I finished part 3, and part 3 deals with it's called revision. You know, in brackets because it has to do with vision and redefining our vision. So revision is the perfect word, and I just finished it. No sooner had I finished it, and believe me, it was a monumental task. I had 6 months of work on it, right?
Oh yeah, I
And I
believe you.
finished it, and a friend pings me and he sends me a link, and this is the kind of person that, you know, whose links you want to have a quick look at because they're usually very interesting. And what do I get? And I'll show you what I got. I got this, right? There's Tucker Carlson. I mean, I got to hand it to him. He pulls this honest historian onto his show called Daryl Cooper. And this guy essentially opens up the World War II narrative. And he walks into a minefield because he opens up the dialogue about everybody's sacred cow, you know, and that war is, well, who? It's Winston Churchill, right? He's the savior of the world. And what does Daryl Cooper do? He basically says the World War II scene went to the extreme that it did because of one man. And guess who that was? And it wasn't Adolf Hitler. It was
Winston
Churchill.
Churchill.
It was Winston Churchill. And, you know, and he starts talking and Tucker's like, whoa, whoa. Like he's trying to, you know, kind of steer the ship a little bit because he knows he's probably going to get into trouble. Little did he know how much trouble, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But this guy kind of opens up on the truth, the absolute truth. And I, you know, I realized after reading the article and seeing what happened to him, I realized that here's a man who's speaking and who has the balls to speak the truth about a small window. Okay. Like, let's face it, the war is a huge thing. And once the war started and got out of hand, it turned into another beast altogether. But
because once the conflict is in full force,
yes,
the first casualty is communication and truth. So you don't have honest communication between anyone anymore.
Right.
So, you know, once that first significant shot is fired, it's over.
Right.
You know, it's all gone. Yeah.
Right. Right. So he opens up this dialogue and he starts talking about information. And I was listening. That sounds like I'm sitting there going, this guy is telling the truth about who. And I just finished he's borrowing from an amazing historian who's no longer with us, unfortunately, by the name of David Irving. And
amazing and extremely hated.
Oh yeah, totally hated. The truth is always hated by the zombies, right? And so he's talking about Churchill being essentially a drunken, psychopathic, narcissistic slob who did not, you know, take any, like he didn't take any, like Hitler was giving him peace proposals, right? And I have this, so like this is
come on, Frank, you conspiracy theorist, come on, that can't be true. Sorry, but I got to play the devil's advocate here for a moment.
Please do, because everyone like literally people don't know this, because like Churchill is literally the poster child of the savior of the world. And listen, John, once I found out that narrative was not only partially incorrect, but like completely upside down, I'm the kind of person that, you know, I love it. I can't wait. I can't wait to dissect this one and take it down, right? And, you know, because these kind of narcissists, they have ruled our planet for centuries.
I agree with you, but I don't think that they are the actual ruling class. I think they are the receivers of orders, and they are playing them out, and their personalities lend themselves to it. They're probably possessed. But, you know, I want to say one more time really clearly, in my perception, in my opinion, all peoples, like all humans of the world, have been manipulated into this game. But it isn't a particular religious group that is steering the game. Even that group that seems to be in power is being used by an archontic force that has no religion as such, as we would call it. It's inverted consciousness. It's literally upside down. It's what we might call a dark force. That's important for me to say, because right now I see this polarization and it's back to the old games. Oh, it's these people or is those? No, we're all being manipulated. We're all being played.
Well, you used the word there that, you know, that's kind of like going where I wanted to go today. And we're going to get to that, you know, what that means, because you're absolutely right. And for me, in the course of doing this work, it was important to make sure people understand that there is another level of manipulation going on here. It is beyond what religious group you identify with. It is beyond what race you are with. That has no significance anymore, because what we're pulling into right now is really the end game of, well, that's kind of a, I'm tired of that word too, but it's the showdown, whatever you want to
It's
call it.
true. That's the
But what
showdown.
it is really, and I'm thinking to myself, well, where's, you know, like, okay, well, listen, like, let's, and one scene in particular I want to share with you from the webinar, if you want to indulge me, which is
Sure.
David Irving, which talks about Churchill, which substantiates. And I think we need to come to Mr. Daryl Cooper's defense here, because right now he is being absolutely slammed and attacked by all the zombies. So we need
But
to show.
based on emotional belief systems, not based on fact.
No, totally right. Okay, check this out. I'm going to play about I don't know, maybe 3 minutes. I forget how long it is, but listen to Mr. Irving.
July the 6th, 1944, he says Churchill attended the cabinet meeting in a state of intoxication. He talked and talked from 10 p.m. until 2 in the morning, 4 hours, and he hardly let anybody get a word in edgeways. And it's only of interest because it shows that it was by no means humorous or funny or ridiculous or droll when Churchill was drunk, because on that day he took this decision, which I have here, signed by Churchill, July the 6th, 1944. You can see his initials and date on the end. This is the day that Churchill took this decision to start poison gas warfare. Although we had signed the protocols at Geneva, the Geneva Gas Convention, we would never ever use poison gas, Churchill decided to commit a war crime. He was going to have poison gas bombs dropped on all the biggest German cities immediately, and he ordered the general staff, the air staff, to prepare it forthwith. To commit a war crime. We had the bombs ready, the mustard gas and all the other poison gases. We had tens of thousands of bombs filled, and we had 2 million bombs filled with anthrax germs. Also, a little known fact, a friend of mine in the BBC found this out, Robert Harris. He wrote an article about it, and of course you can imagine the vitriol which was poured on him, having revealed this little fact, that Churchill was wanting to drop 2 million anthrax bombs on Germany. Although anthrax, as you know from a farming community, any of you, is a deadly killer of livestock, of human beings. We tried one anthrax bomb on one island off the Scottish coast during the war just to see if it worked. And that island is still uninhabitable today, ladies and gentlemen. That's the effect of anthrax. Churchill had 2 million filled. He wanted to drop them beginning with July 1944. I want you to think very seriously, he wrote on this drunken evening. I want you to think very seriously over this question of poison gas. It's absurd to consider morality because, of course, the whole argument had been about whether we're going to allow ourselves to commit a war crime or not. It's absurd to consider morality on this topic when everybody used it in the last war without a word of complaint from the moralists or the church. On the other hand, in the last war, the bombing of open cities was regarded as forbidden. Now everybody does it as a matter of course. It's simply a question of fashion changing as she does between long and short skirts for women. I don't think you often hear that quoted in your newspapers over here, when we always regard with fond admiration and nostalgia the record of Winston Churchill. I want a cold-blooded calculation made as to how it would pay us to use poison gas. I only mention this example because it gives us a direct yardstick with which to compare Hitler and Churchill. On other matters, of course, you have no yardstick because they're two completely different worlds and mentalities. But on this particular one, poison gas, you've got one yardstick. And I can tell you, you can take it from me. I've read the entire German documentation for 10 years. All the way through the German files, Adolf Hitler has flatly and emphatically forbidden and embargoed anywhere the use of poison gas. And isn't it strange that Adolf Hitler, the devil incarnate, had the means whereby he could have secured an immediate strategic advantage which would have turned the war, because he would have pulled the 9 or 10 panzer divisions out of Normandy and sent them to the Russian front, and with those high-grade divisions he would have wiped the floor with the Russians and ended the war by Christmas 1944. But he had put his name on a piece of paper, the Geneva Gas Protocol, saying that he would never use gas first because it would be a war crime.
You know, Frank, I'll give you my reaction to this, because I think, and I've seen this, but my reaction to this is, if, as you as a viewer feel repulsed, if you have this, oh my God, this guy's just spewing bullshit, here's what I would encourage you to do. Without any ideological direction, imagine that you're coming to Earth from a different place. You have no affiliations, you have no family there, you have no community there, you have no roots there. And all that you're trying to do is to figure out what happened on Earth, and you're following the facts. If you can do that, you will have no ideological coloring in what you're discovering. You will simply look for the facts, and it won't matter to you because that's not your home, that's not your place. If you can go into that perspective of an objective researcher, then all of these things will make much more sense. And if you put the pieces in correctly, history will make much better sense. Here's the thing. My quarrel was always, if you have the truth on your side, you don't need to outlaw the lies.
That's right.
You don't need to outlaw lies if you have the truth on your side. If you don't, then you need to outlaw all other narratives. If you live in Germany and Austria today, guess what? What that guy just did is a crime that you go to prison for. That is the insanity of this, and this should tell us so much. I mean, sorry, I just wanted to give you my 2 cents on the general theme here.
Well, now you know why I called it the time capsule for the future past, because that's kind of the perspective. Like, imagine you dig up, like, you know, figuratively, this data in 200 years or 300 years, right? It's long gone. All this stuff's long over, right? But you wanted to know what really took place. And it's like, who is out there who's able to tell us the truth anymore about, or let's just say, a much more objective and balanced perspective? I think that's the fairest way to say it. And this is what we're after here. We're not trying to whitewash any of these horrendous events that took place. That's impossible to do anyway. But it's just such a obvious, contrived, fake narrative that has been placed upon, and we've been brainwashed for so long with it. And in fact, you know, I'm going to put up on the screen a slide I put together, which is the backlash that the poor guy, the zombie backlash that I call it, right? Oh my God, right? Oh my God, he dared, right? And instantly the headlines, the Daily Beast, Tucker Carlson slammed after hosting Nazi apologist on podcast. And Tucker Carlson hosts historian who promotes Nazi falsehoods. And it's all like, oh, and here's one. Elon Musk deletes post promoting Tucker Carlson video following backlash, right? What did he get? What did he do? Well, he put up a post that said, hey, interesting program to watch, right? And they so slammed him that, and then you didn't see anybody in the alternative. You know, this is what you talked about at the very beginning. Where were the Joe Rogans and the Alex Joneses to come to the defense of freedom of speech, to say, hey, wait a minute, here's a guy who had the absolute kahunas, right, to step forth and to put his reputation and his name in the limelight and say, look, I'm tired of the lie. I'm tired of the propaganda. I'm tired of the fake timeline. I want the real timeline. And listen, man, he didn't even touch. On all. Like, he's not even touching a tenth of you know, of where you can go with this material, right? But then, you know, then it's like, what is it? Like, you have to ask yourself, like, look at, you know, like then the White House condemns Tucker Carlson's Nazi propaganda interview as disgusting and sadistic insult, right? Well, who are these people to say disgusting, sadistic insult after putting us through what they put us through? Here are the same people who are calling out Tucker Carlson for having a guest on his show who tells the truth, because they don't attack the message, ever notice? They only attack the messenger. If you can't beat the information, which is truthful, kill the messenger. That's the only tactic that they have left in their arsenal. They can only attack with cheap shots, and all of these articles are not, they're all straw man arguments. This is one of the main ways of defeating an enemy if you're trying to beat them on, if they're telling you the truth. Well, you just divert the argument to another topic which has nothing to do with it, and you get everyone screaming about that topic, and they totally forget what it's really all about here, right? So unfortunately, and then you have to ask yourself, okay, so poor Tucker, right, on that side. But then on the other hand, like, come on, he's got a well-known history as a CIA brat. I've seen him. I've heard sound bites from him about 911 where I just got to shake my head, and I'm like, so whose side is he really on? Right? Is this the kind of level of chess that we're talking about now? Where
no. I think I think it's very clear that Tucker is literally controlled opposition. Like, you have some podcasts and some shows that are great, that put out some good information, but it's only so far and never beyond, and especially not bringing on people that actually have a broader perspective, whether you agree or not as a journalist. I mean, he went against the government to interview a war enemy, Putin, and so to me, it's so clear that we're only allowed a certain perspective, and that's being pushed. That's why he gets 100 million views.
Right.
If he would bring someone like, I don't know, David Icke on, I'm sure that, that wouldn't fly whatsoever.
Well, that's why, a situation like this could be very poisonous for truth movement. On the one hand, this guy's on the show telling the truth, but the backlash is so forceful that everyone who is in the truth movement is going, oh my God, look what happened to Carlson. I better shut my mouth. I better not say anything, right? And, I'm reading the article, I'm going, wow, they're pulling out all the vicious weapons, but you know what? It's all just hot air. I mean, there's nothing to their arguments. If you can really talk to these people and argue with them, there is no way that they will ever prevail, because if you present something which is true, the truth stands up to any scrutiny, right? And, and then there was an article put out by Paul Craig Roberts, right? And I'll just quote a little bit of it. I think it's important. Like he says, essentially, no one has answered David Irving's findings. They just call him names. That tells you where the stronger case resides. He says, I'm not a World War II historian, neither is Tucker Carlson, but we both wonder why views are suppressed if they can be factually disproved, right? Then he goes on to say, the propagandistic way in which World War II has been presented for 83 years has had major harmful effects on countries, their populations, foreign affairs, and world history. Those who bring balance to the story should be celebrated, not demonized. If you will notice, during the 21st century, in every country in the Western world, what can be discussed or even mentioned has been massively narrowed. We have reached the point where almost anything said or written is hate speech, racist, misogynist, a threat to democracy, offensive, insensitive, anti-Semitic, or Russian propaganda. The great writings in the English language, such as Shakespeare, cannot even be read in schools because they violate structures or strictures that have been imposed on language. Bigots now dictate our use of language. Official narratives dictate our understanding of history and current events. A world is being created for us in which facts and truth are objectionable. I mean, thanks to Paul Craig Roberts for being one of the only voices with a bit of an outreach to come forward and actually say what is going on here, right?
And the story is, Frank, that what this is really about is to keep our perceptions in a box, and that's what this is about. You have to stay within a box, because if you don't, you start questioning things that are so big and such huge lies that when that house of cards falls, everything falls with it. And as clear as it has become that is where the journey is going, that's what the awakening is actually doing. It's tearing down this house of lies. These forces are so afraid of this, and they will do anything. They create false awakening movements. They've propped up a $1 billion truth and freedom movement that is inherently misleading people, and people like yourself and a handful of others, there's not much more, are actually just saying, hey, this is where the truth leads me. I have no quarrel with any people. I don't hate anyone. We're all being lied to. This is the biggest and hardest pill for anyone to swallow. And this war that is at our doorsteps, that should be, if there is a war, which I don't believe in war, but if there is a war, it should actually only be against those forces. But this war, if it does happen, will be amongst people again who actually are so in sync in their values and basic fundamental wants and needs that it's laughable that they should fight each other. How long do you think this whole house of lies can keep standing, and what will have to happen to break through to the at least critical mass that everything we've been taught is a lie?
Well, first of all, a war, even if it is controlled by extraneous forces, has to be fought by human beings. So the most powerful thing that we as humans can do is we can just not participate. But to not participate means that you have to have a solid foundation behind why you're choosing. You're making a choice here, a foundational choice based on what? Are you just making a choice because you're going with the herd? Or do you know that it's just not right and that you have the power in yourself and through your radiance to affect all the people, many more people than you possibly even know? So one of the steps that is behind doing this is another very powerful meme, which is ancient. I'm sure you're going to recognize this one. Check this out. You've probably heard of this.
Of course.
The allegory of the cave.
Plato's
cave, right? Well, here's a more contemporary view of it. What do we have going on here, right? We have people symbolized as the unawakened people. You know, they're not to be faulted in a way, because they've been allured into this world underground. It's symbolized by the cave, and they're the sleepwalkers. You know, they're the zombies. They're in a stasis state, brainwashed by the media and educational program, and they're looking at reflections. You know, they're not the truth. They're just reflections. And in this diagram, you see then, of course, then some people that are waking up, they figure out, hey, wow, look at this. There's a way out of this cave. And what happens? They get out to the top of the cave and they realize, oh my God, there's a real world. Like there's a real world out there, which is the actual world. And this world that I thought was real, that's all just been reflections this whole time. This is not real. This is illusion. This is simulation, right? And so that's the first stage that is involved in it changing, is people realizing that they've been in a simulation in a way, and that they haven't even lived reality yet. But the reason that they're in that state is, this is another very amazing coincidence, or let's say synchronicity. And I know you've had a lot of them, I'm sure. And it has to do.
I don't even know what that is, Frank. What are we talking about here?
Well,
a synchronicity?
There's another word for it here. Maybe you'll recognize this word. It's called Wetiko.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's what the natives call the mind virus. Yeah.
Right. So Wetiko is somebody sent me a page and said, hey, check out this, this author, right? Paul Levy. It's a Wetiko. And what he's talking about here is exactly what I've been working on. And I want to go a couple of steps into it so that people get it. So that, we'll look like, let's just read through this. Okay. Just like a certain computer, viruses or malware infect a program or computer to self-destruct, mind viruses like Wetiko can program the human biocomputer to think, believe, and behave in ways that result in our self-destruction. Wetiko is a virulent psychic pathogen that insinuates thought forms into our mind, which then unconsciously enacted feed it and ultimately kills its host, which is us. Like a cancer of the mind that metastasizes in Wetiko disease, a pathological part of the psyche co-opts and subsumes all the healthy parts of the psyche into itself so as to serve its pathology, right? And then it goes on. I'll read a couple more slides. Once the parasite becomes sufficiently entrenched within the psyche, the prime directive coordinating a person's behavior comes from the disease, as it is now the one calling the shots. The disease is. Just as someone infected with the rabies virus will resist drinking water, which would flush out all the infection, someone taken over by the Wetiko parasite will have nothing to do with anything that will help get rid of the disease. In a psychic coup d'etat, the Wetiko bug can usurp and displace the person, who becomes its puppet and marionette. Like a parasite, the Wetiko virus can take over the will of an animal more evolved than itself, enlisting that creature into serving its nefarious agenda. And then the personality then self-organizes in an outer display of coherence around this pathogenic core, which masks the inner dysfunction, making it hard to recognize, like the new normal. Wetikos are phobic towards the light of truth, which they avoid like a plague. In advanced stages, this process takes over the person so completely that we could rightfully say the person is no longer there. They are just an empty shell carrying the disease. In a sense, there is just the disease operating through what appears to be a human being. The person becomes fully identified with their mask, their persona, but it is as if there is no one behind the mask. Okay, and I'll pause there because it goes on. But this is what is going on here. People in the world that are in that cave have literally become so dysfunctional and so infected by the parasite, in this case called Wetiko. But you mentioned the word earlier. What it really is archons. And what motivated me to do this webinar was because I was trying to get to where did this all start? Like, what is the source of the Wetiko thing? And there is, in fact, the earliest known written writings in book form, which were preserved and found in Nag Hammadi in 1945, actually are the Gnostic teachings, the true Gnostic teachings that go back not just, to the time of the early Christians. That's a fake version of Gnosticism. The real Gnostic mystery school teachers, they knew about Wetiko, but they had another word for it, and it was called the archons.
And isn't it interesting, Frank, that when you look at these teachings and texts and writings, that we think that our current themes that we discuss, simulation, a copy of the real world, a false reality, inverted consciousness, these all seem to us like they are new concepts that we're coming up, we're discovering this, and really it's been here, and we've been victims of it, if you will. I don't like the word victim, but this has been
infected. We've been infected by it.
Yeah, infected. This has been the theme of human existence for so long, and trapped consciousness for so long. It's actually incredible, and sort of what happened to me is when I realized, when I connected these dots myself a while ago, is like, I'm starting to remember the truth of all of this, right? Rather than learning it, it's remembering. So what happened to you when you discovered the Gnostic teachings?
Well, it sent me on a real deep dive of, like, I'm like, wait a minute, like, okay, if that's true, like, if literally this stuff there existed on this planet, starting at least in terms of the Gnosticism and the mystery schools 6,000 years ago, a body of knowledge began to be accumulated about the creation of our planet, about the real creation story that was documented by mystery school teachers, mystics, people that had access to paranormal functionality that humans have. But it wasn't just like tripping on acid with a friend on the weekend. It was people that were using their paranormal faculties to tap into higher dimensions and to basically pull down the information that's in the field. Like, we've talked a lot about that. Talked about it in the Inner Looking Glass. It's about, this information, all of it is out there in the field. And this information was gathered and gathered and gathered, and it built up to a massive culture. There was a rich culture of this information being taught all through Mesopotamia, thousands of years ago. And then what happened is, the most unfortunate and familiar event that people will recognize who are probably watching is the burning of the Library of Alexandria. Because the Library of Alexandria symbolizes the teachings that had been accumulated, maps. We're talking about, maps, diagrams, histories of the rise and fall of early human civilizations. We wonder about, where did, the pyramids, or where did all these amazing megalithic structures, where did they come from? And most people subscribe to, the alien, the aliens that came here and they bred and they took humans and made them and all this stuff. But apparently the real story lies somewhere totally different. And so the first thing I had to do is, like, I had to digest that, because, as you know, I'm invested in a lot of extraterrestrial related material. So, the question is, what is an extraterrestrial? That's the first question that came up. And so what you find out is that
we could also say interdimensional, huh? It's probably more accurate.
What you find in the Nag Hammadi codices, going back thousands of years, is them discussing that extraterrestrial influence. They were actually talking about it, and they were discussing about and they called it archons. This is the real source of the archontic infection. And they talk about how basically the archons came and they were trying to enter into the human experiment, which was seeded by a higher, completely other level of intelligence. And out of it is fantastic because there's a whole creation story, which Tanya, which by the way, also she says hello again.
Right back at you, Tanya.
We were traveling in the States we did a 3,000-mile road trip back in May and June. And during that time, I was getting this creation story fed to me from John Lash, and I was looking at it and I was reading it to her, and it resonated so heavily. She said, "Look, I've got it." I said, I had this idea, these downloads. I'm like, suddenly I saw like I've got to include this creation narrative so people have another perspective. So I can take a lot of heavy left brain information, which some of the webinar will be. It's very dense, fact related. Mix it with more right brain mythical information, which is the mythical narrative, which had been ground that had been basically discovered and captured by the ancient mystery schools, which then turned into something called the fallen goddess scenario. So you find out that very few people, that a lot of people are talking about, what's going on and the extraterrestrials, and they're going to come and save us, right? But one thing very few people ever talk about is actually the being Sophia. And so this story that these Gnostics brought down talks about Sophia as a plasma being. And, this is going to rack your brain, right? But you know what? There's science behind it. As always, you know me, I like to have a scientific foundation. So that has to be part of it. So that's part of it as well. And essentially, but I think the most mind-blowing thing for me, I think, with respect to the Gnostics, and then I'll shut up, is, here, I'll put it up on screen. This is so cool, right? Oh yeah, that's the screenshot for the second part called Archons. But is this, like, you find out there's something called the first apocalypse of James, and the Apocryphon of John, and the hypostasis of the archons. These are ancient scripts that had been written down and translated. And one of these translations talks about what happens to you if you are attacked by archons. Can you believe this? Listen to this. Right? This is a situation.
I'll give you my take afterwards, okay?
This is a situation where essentially, this is a revelation dialogue which was captured between an unnamed teacher, who's the master, who's conferring secret knowledge over to a Gnostic called James. So the master says, James, whenever you are seized and you undergo death pangs, mortal fear, a multitude of archons may turn on you, thinking they can capture you. And in particular, 3 of them will seize you, those who pose as toll collectors. I love it. Not only do they demand toll, but they take away souls by theft. Now, when you come under their power, one of them, who is their overseer, will say to you, okay, now they had direct experience with this, John, right? This is why the guy knows what's going to happen, right? Who are you and where are you from? You are then to say to him, I am a child of humanity, and I am from the source. He will then say to you, what sort of child are you, and to what source do you belong? You are then to say to him, I am from the pre-existent source. I am the offspring of the source. Then he will say to you, why are you sent out from the source? Then you are to say to him, I came from the pre-existent one, so that I might behold those of my kind and those who are alien. And he will say to you, what are those alien beings? You are to say to him, they are not entirely alien, for they are from the fallen Sophia, Achamoth, the female divinity who produced them when she brought the human race down from the source, the realm of the pre-existent one. So they are not entirely alien, but they are our kin. They are indeed so because she who is their matrix, Sophia, Achamoth, is from the source. At the same time, they are alien because Sophia did not combine with her like in the source, that's her divine male counterpart, when she produced them. When he also says to you, where will you go now? You are to say to him, to the place when I came, the source. There shall I return. And if you respond in this matter, you will escape their attacks. And there's the source. It's like, it's from the Nag Hammadi Codex, volume 333. I mean, this is the kind of information. This is like in-depth, detailed instructions from mystery school teachers to their adepts when they encounter the archons that are coming at them from another dimension, you could say. You know,
it's quite the technological, mechanical process. And I want to share, I might as well share it. I want to share personal experience. I've had those quite a few times, and I usually don't share them because of the exposure to certain things that might be more harmful to the collective than it is helpful. But I'll tell you this. A few times in my life, I was closer to death than I was to life. Death in terms of being the end of this physical experience. And that was usually connected to severe pain and discomfort beyond description. And so during those times, in great times of suffering, you are closer to the veil, or the veil is thinner for you. So you experience a sort of a back and forth between different dimension a little more. That's like what people call a delirious state. In my most recent delirious state, there was an offer that was made to me that could basically take away my pain, right? Immediately. It was the worst pain I've ever experienced. So the offer was, we can make this go away. And it wasn't a full conversation. It could download the implied truth of this was, yes, I can have this happen, but I am literally giving up that which makes me what I am. And that's the deal with the devil, as it is called in our world.
right.
And hell, I turned it down like that. Like I had no, but it was there. And it is coming, and that is literally what this you just described. It's just in a different form, but it's the same principle.
Yes.
Here's the offer. Here's the offer. This archontic force can make your life whatever you want it to be, but it's an illusion of that, because it is an illusion. But you will experience it as real, and for that you give up you give up spirit, you give up your access to who you really are, and you literally you renew your subscription for eternal returns, right? For recycling.
Yeah.
And this is the key out, is that you do not give in to the temptation of the false light, of the false illumination, of the false teachers, of the fake gurus. This is what this is telling you, is if it ain't prime source, that which you came from, fuck it. Don't go for it.
That's right. And it's just interesting, because when you realize that this whole alien ET phenomena is nothing new, it's been there. In fact, the archons were here before humanity. They existed before humanity. And if you listen to the Fallen Goddess scenario, which we have in the webinar, you'll learn that whole story of, why did the archons appear before humanity? That can't be right. And why are they there at all? And how do they act? And it's all of it is just, at first it seems very far out. And then you begin to test it in terms of, you can actually find, physics and astronomy that support that story completely. In fact, even the creation of our solar system ties into plasma physics and electric universe, which is the new.
You might even say AI plasma physics.
Well, there's AI. I mean, this is an important, distinction here, right? AI, you could say, if anything is AI, it would be this archontic infection, because the archons they have one quality, and they cannot create. In fact, I'm going to read one more slide here, because this is something which there's a sociological definition of the archons which people need to understand, because it's important right now. So I'm going to share it. Okay. Basically, this is what John Lash put down. And I keep mentioning him because he spent like 30, 40 years on this stuff. He's like the prime facie expert on the whole thing. In the Gnostic view of human society, the archons are alien forces that act through authoritarian systems, including belief systems. Judaism, Christianity, Islam. in ways that cause human beings to turn against their innate potential and violate their symbiosis of nature. Archons are agents of error rather than evil, but human error, when it goes uncorrected and runs beyond the scale of correction, turns into evil and works against the universal plan of life. Gnostics taught that the Archons exploit our tendency to let our mistakes go uncorrected. Because the Archons need human complicity to gain power over humankind, anyone who assists them can be considered a kind of Archon, an accessory. How do humans assist the Archons? One way is by accepting the mental programs of the Archons. That is, adopting the alien intelligence as if it were human-based, and implementing those programs by actually enforcing them in society. Another way is by actively or passively conforming to the agendas so proposed and imposed. And this is what we're talking about here, right? It requires our complicity. And the best that the Archons can do, and there's even, you can go to the Adam and Eve story, and the Gnostics have the Garden of Eden story as well, but it's not the one that ended up in the Bible in the Old Testament. That one has been manipulated. That one's been changed. And what they are talking about is something totally different. And they have their own story of how that happened. And it's very fascinating, but it always has to do with the fact that these are the only way they can penetrate us is they have limited, they're physical as well as mental beings. But the most powerful way that they can penetrate our reality is telepathically. Channeling, for example, if it isn't source pure, is totally open to being manipulated, right? And, they have limited physical access, but they have never, and this is what the Gnostics said 2,000 years ago, they have never penetrated our genome, because our genome was created by these aeons, which are higher beings. And they would like you to believe that they've penetrated and that they've changed the genome. And this is the Anunnaki story, the Sumerian story, right? But even that story has been debunked. I'm sorry to say it to all those who are invested in the Anunnaki and ancient alien narrative, but even that story, and I'll tell you why it's bunk. You know why? Because that story about these Sumerian kings and the Anunnaki builds on Earth that whole idea of a royal bloodline, that there was some alien offspring that came here, was imbued with information that made them superior to the other human beings who didn't have it. And that is the foundation for control and dominance that has plagued our planet ever since. The newest chapter only is the one that came about in the Abrahamic religions, but it already existed thousands of years earlier. There's nothing new going on here, John. This is the same story, that this is how they penetrate. And we can totally stop them. All we have to know is to recognize that, wait a minute, what you just did and what you described, that saying no, you turned it down. That is the most powerful thing that a human being can do, is to turn down that influence and to know that actually, no, you know what? We're not aliens. We're not from an alien planet. Aliens aren't better than us. Guess what? We're from the Earth. And the Earth was created by a divine being on other levels altogether. In fact, she is the Earth. And, so we are connected, and that's where we draw our power. We draw our power from the Earth, not from the stars. We're destined to return to source, and we're probably destined to travel out into the stars too, but not in the state of parasitical infection. If we can't even have Daryl Cooper come on to Tucker Carlson and talk for 1 or 2 hours about the truth of a totally propagandized lie narrative that was, thrust upon society 83 years ago to conform to the domination paradigm of master race ideology, then we're not ready to go to the stars. Simple as that.
The human story is divided in the chosen ones, the antagonists, and the foot soldiers right now, right? And so, it's so easy to see through it. And you touched on something so incredibly important, and this is something that I talked about more and more recently, is you have to remember that we have something that is all powerful, and that is free will. And that with our free will, we can choose way more than we've been led to believe. As a matter of fact, we can even choose to jump off the quote-unquote karmic wheel that is supposedly something inherently real that we can't escape. which would, by the way, completely invalidate the notion of free will. Either you have it or you don't.
Right.
And you know, I have found myself in the first few chapters of my life encountering some of the same challenges and situations over and over again. And they felt pre-programmed, predestined, and it is a high level of frustration when you run into the same challenge over and over again. It just keeps getting more intense. And so eventually, you know, I asked myself, what is this program and how do I transcend it? And I realized that it needed my consent, it needed my participation, it needed my ultimately same reaction, same frustration. So I had to transcend it through consciousness, not through just new thoughts. I had to literally raise my consciousness to transcend above it. And guess what happened? Those situations ceased to appear in my life. You know, I had forgiveness for myself. I had forgiveness for others. I had love for myself, and I chose to literally rise above it. And this is exactly what happened. Though that which I perceived as karma stopped appearing in my life, and all of a sudden you're having a canvas,
Right.
a blank canvas that you start creating on through your own free will and divine inspiration, whatever you want to call it. And we've been programmed through religion so crazily that isn't possible, that it's all predetermined, predestined. And so people keep reliving the same thing over again. They get a new name, they get a new identity, they get a new body, but it's the same story. Guess what? You can't transcend it. We can end the game. This ancient game that's been going on for so long, the reason why Frank Jacob is here, the reason why others are here, why we are here, is just to remind ourselves we can actually rise above this stupid game. We can walk off the field and realize it is a game. Sophisticated, old, ancient, powerful, but a game. Not different from a soccer game or a football game or anything else. If you spend all your life on the field, you think it's real. You think the referee is your God. You really think that because he's holding all the cards. But the moment you walk off the field, the referee has no power over you. The rules of the game don't apply, and you are, by definition, free. But you have to have the courage to walk off the field and you know, against all the warnings, don't walk off, it's dangerous, don't, there's signs, there's alerts, there's everything trying to keep you from it, but no one can actually keep you from it. You have to choose to either stay on it or walk off. And here's the thing, we're walking off. And our intention is to inspire as many people as possible to walk off the field with us. Does that analogy kind of speak to you, Frank? Is that something you see similarly?
I love it. The only thing I would add is that it's that people need to understand what they're walking off is the artificial game. Is the game that's those rules, that set of stuff that's been put into your brain that keeps you locked from being the true potential, the genius that you are inside all of us. That's why we're here. And, you know, we haven't explored this genius level of humanity yet. And because we're busy playing their game. So, yeah, we have to walk off the field. We have to, you know, say, forget it. We're done. And I'm not doing that anymore. And, you know, karma, that's all BS. You know, this is, you know, the Gnostics talk about, like I read, they talked about error.
What's a program? It's like an AI program. It is literally an AI program, karma, which if you choose to agree to it, you're on it. Right. It's just like if you choose to play in the NFL, right? You're getting put on a field over and over again, but you still have the choice. You can choose to say no, thank you. I don't want to do it anymore. Exactly. So it is a choice, but it is powerful because it's been programmed through religion, through cultures, and then the gurus are being shown. And guess what? They're part of the program too. I'm sorry to say it, but they are.
They are, and they're there for us. That, like, the thing is, even Sophia as this, as our creator creature that brought us here, according to the Gnostic intel that I'm representing. Okay, take it in and let it see how it works with you and vibes. But even she was saying, look, even the archons, as evil, or you might say they're evil, but in a way they are introducing error, meaning they're manipulating us to keep our errors and to not, learn from our errors. But in fact, when we don't correct them, they turn evil because they get worse and worse and worse, and we have the domino effect. But they're there also to test us. The universe is testing us with the archons. The archons are our test. And they're there for us to realize that, you know, it's like you say, we can forget it. I'm walking off the field. I'm not going to listen to that whistle. I'm done. I'm done with this game. I'm done with the artificiality of the world. And I want to embrace reality for the first time. And I'm looking forward to reality. You know, I mean, from the very beginning, when we started talking in our conversations, we talked about timelines. That's just it's another meme that says nothing different. It's just saying there's a natural, organic, biological timeline, which is the one that is going to be the one we reach our fullest potential as the human genome on, the anthropos, as it's called in the language of the Gnostics. And there's the artificial one. That's the transhumanist one, the simulation one that the archons are pushing. But it doesn't make it real, you know, unfortunately, because so many of us are in that cave watching the reflection on the wall. You know, we're following along when they tell you to get up and move and go that, you know, or over here, you know, everyone just kind of following along, right? But, you know, they're just there to get us to wake up and become what we truly are. And I think this is the crux moment that we're at. That's why, you know, when I saw that happen with Tucker and this Daryl Cooper guy, I thought this is a crux moment, because this man spoke the truth, and there's no way you can get that that toothpaste back in the tube, man. It's done. And and it was just, I mean, is it a coincidence that on the day that I finished part 3, which is exactly that topic, that will be posted? No, it's the universe saying to me, okay, Frank, the world is ready for a revision. And your timing is perfect. I know it's a bit dangerous, but you know, just do it. You know, and whatever. I don't care. That's why I'm Dunbar on the horse now, and I'm out there and let him, you know, fire away. And because, you know, I want the truth, and I want to know if I'm wrong, and you show me where I'm wrong, and we'll fix it. But I'm no longer going to participate in playing the game that I know is not real, and I'd rather keep my mouth shut than perpetuate the lie any further. This is one of the things that disappoints me by some of the teachers out there, that they're amplifying the fiction. You know, they should just stop talking because they don't know the truth. So
but they are not, a lot of times, and here's what I notice, you know, when it comes to younger stories like the 2020 event and forward, it's a little easier. When it comes to younger stories, even like 9/11, that's not even, you know, it's like a generation now. Like there's a new generation who grew up, but the story of World War II has gone through multiple generations, and it's sort of, it's seated in the subconscious now, right? And it's passed on, and you know, in growing up, especially in the Central European environment, it's in the culture, it's in theater, it's in the music, it's in everything, it's in the opera, it's in the school plays. So there is only one version of it that is being like literally hammered into people's minds. So when they talk about it, they usually don't talk about it from a conscious standpoint. It's like, that's just pulling from, everybody knows this. I mean, everybody knows what happened.
Exactly.
Which is the telltale sign that this is not what happened. Like, you know, people used to say for a while, everybody knows that a guy in a cave in Afghanistan pulled off the most sophisticated terrorist attack in America, defying one of the most sophisticated defense systems, bringing down buildings with planes and whatnot. Everybody knows that's how it happened, and they couldn't find it for freaking 10 years because he was hiding in the caves with the most sophisticated satellite and whatnot technology. They know what you're doing at any given time, but they can't find him. And that story for some time was, everybody knows that, until it was taken apart so clearly and so precisely that now nobody believes that shit any longer. Right. And unfortunately, in order to get through the Wetiko, through the mind virus and heal it, we need to confront all the falsehoods and all the lies and the deceptions and walk through them to truth. There's no other way. There's no spiritual bypassing. There's no, oh, I don't want to touch this. No. If we don't call the bullshit, you know, it's like Frank says, you know what that is? Uncorrected errors.
Exactly.
And that's what that is. And
what some people often ask is, well, how do I tell? You know, how can I tell the truth? They're making it so easy for us, you know, and this is such a positive thing. The fact that this is how you can tell if a Daryl Cooper event happens in the future, whatever form that takes, and you see a complete massive backlash, like, oh my God, this person said that, you know, how dare they, right? This shouldn't be out there. This is a lie. And everyone starts singing the same chorus in the mainstream, even in the alternative mainstream. You know what? That's your sign. Look deep, because that's exactly, you'll know for sure what you're learning about there, the opposite is actually true. And so they couldn't have made it easier. They're making major mistakes. By them, actually, the best thing they could have done, John, is they could have just ignored Tucker and let the thing pass away under the bridge, water under the bridge. No one cares. Who's going to watch, right? No, but they
got too much riding on Tucker, Frank. They got too much riding on Tucker. Tucker is now a pillar of this false awakening movement. And Tucker, you know, it's on the one hand, it's genius. On the other hand, it's dangerous, because you have one figure that has so much power. You can't let that slide, because now people might look beyond the edge, and that's not what it's supposed to do. You want them in the new conservative, you know, edgy, conspiratorial, but not beyond. Don't free their consciousness. Don't correct their errors. That's not
exactly. Well, I mean, this is it. This is like, and you know, we have like, but it's like for those of us who are able to identify, we see the Tuckers, right? We see where this, like even Elon, right? Elon posts it like a tease, right? He hangs it out there. And then what does he do? Instead of having balls, like a real man, sorry, Elon, keep it out there. No, he pulls it back, right? And then you see the headlines, even Elon Musk pulled it back because we know it's not true, right? And it's like, we know it's a bad conspiracy, right? This is like, I'm sorry, man. They're pulling their pants down themselves for us to see what they're really made of. And you know, and I'm so glad to be alive, and I'm so thankful for you, John, that you and I can sit here and you have balls to pull me on your show and promote my webinar, because I know my webinar is going to push a lot of buttons. And hats off to you, man.
Here's the thing, Frank. You're not telling people, here's what you should believe.
Right.
Here's the party, the guy that you should vote for. Here's the religion you should subscribe to. If you were doing that, I would have said no. If you were another apostle that pulls people into another box, even though the webinar might be good, I wouldn't do it. I want to encourage people to give themselves permission to think freely, to truly tap into the field of infinite information, to expand their awareness, and to not necessarily come to predestined conclusions, but to ask bigger questions. Who benefits? Why? What is this game? How do we walk off the field? How do they free themselves? I have no I may have skin in the game, but no horse in the race. I don't have a particular outcome that I wish people to come to, or I don't want their vote. None of that. To me, it's like, am I really free if everyone else is still enslaved? You know, is it really freedom then? And I just want to invite people in and say, hey, this is what we're finding, and we just want to encourage you to look. Does this resonate with you? And that's why I appreciate your approach. You have no hatred in your heart. It's not like, oh, these are the bad people, these are the good people. We're all being duped.
Yeah,
we've all been had, and we all had to change our hearts, change our minds, and be honest with ourselves and say, I was wrong. I didn't know better. Now I do. And that's expansion. That's the only thing we're here for, in my opinion.
Yep, expansion is the right word here. And I think just, the whole idea of cognitive dissonance is going to come up for people. And if you're feeling cognitive dissonance, it's a healthy thing. And realize that, the discussion of the future should be about your cognitive dissonance. Like, what is making you feel dissonant inside cognitively, right? And share it with people. You'd be surprised how many other people out there are mulling over the same stuff, and they're just not, they just don't dare talk about it with anybody. But we're like, maybe just think of us as litmus tests. We're the people that are going to kind of dip our toes in the water and see what's going on. And as long as you keep it, I think, at the high level, like the high road, like you don't get into the gutter. Like, I think you opened up the show talking about some of the discourse that's going on in X right now, anti-Semitical slurs that are really at the lowest level possible. These serve only to foster hatred. And instead, you should realize that, there's a high road you can take where you can look at your own belief system, no matter what it is, and question that belief system, and it's healthy. And realize that as human beings, we are the people, we are the ones that are destined to be here. All of us are the chosen one. That's the lesson to take home. We're all the chosen people. We human beings are the chosen people. And we're the ones that are the masters here. We just have to wake up and realize it. Then we'll stop being manipulated. We'll stop being invaded. We'll stop falling for the scenarios that are being put out in all the Hollywood scripts about the invasion of planet Earth and the insufficiency of humanity, like the transhumanists and the Kurzweil's perspective that human 1.0 is insufficient. It's inferior. It's, this is all lies. This is all stuff that is put out by people who have not yet had the experience. They are not experienced, as Jimi Hendrix would say.
Yeah, and that's I mean, you put it so beautifully. This is like such a great note to finish this Naked Truth show on. That's what I've been saying for so long. It's you have to look at these people. People call them geniuses because they envision singularity and they envision artificial intelligence. And well, you can't underestimate what one level of intelligence combined with deficiencies in other levels of being, how much motivation that can create. What I mean by that is a lot of these people have a hard time being social, have a hard time being expressing, feeling, and reading human emotions and feelings. And so what they do with their level of intelligence is they want to create an environment and a way of life that is void of those human emotions because they can't deal with them. So that, if you look at it from that standpoint, they're literally bullied children that want to create a world that makes it impossible to bully because there are no more human emotions. It's artificial intelligence, and the best decision can always be calculated by AI. And that's where a lot of these people in the field are actually coming from. It's far more sort of primitive, if you will, the motivation behind it. Of course, the archontic force is above, but on a human level, that's what drives them, is to remove their own pain and suffering from existence by removing feelings and emotions from the equation. So, I think you put it brilliantly, Frank. Where can people watch the webinar? You said 3 parts. And what is the most common reaction so far by viewers?
Well, I think the easiest, fastest way to get to it, obviously, if you'd be so kind as to put a link under the video. And I think the most common reaction is that people are writing me saying that this is changing their lives. And I actually haven't had that comment very often in any of the other webinars. This one is a game changer. And there are some really powerful discussions even afterward, because there's this comment section under the videos. People ask me questions, and I try to answer them as thoroughly as I can, because this is we've only just tapped the surface. Even though the total thing is about 7 hours, we're only just scratching the surface of this information, because it opens up so many new avenues of discussion. That, I think, and one of the most powerful messages that people also should realize is that because we've been in Plato's cave, most of the people in the world are stuck in that simulation. Imagine, we've been propped up to think that there's this utopia, the Christians called it, they have dispensationalism, this whole idea that the Jews have that they're the chosen people, all these different viewpoints. They always try to make the utopia somewhere outside of the planet, outside of Earth. But just imagine for a second, if you were living in a life in a planet right now where all these control structures were eliminated, where the central banking system, which is using interest to enslave society, was eliminated, and where we were suddenly, in a situation where we had more happiness, less stress, more free time. We were inspired to maybe have a family. There's the opposite movement from what Kamala Harris is saying. Hey, stop having kids because you're carbon sinners. Actually, what if you were to actually start having greater families and more happiness? Imagine what this planet will be like in that scenario where we, for the first time, we have removed those stressors, which we finally identified as this alien influence, and they're gone. And we now, for the first time, are living as humans free on this planet, exercising free will, and not just a reaction to some program that we've accepted. Just think about that for a second and let that sink into you as you go into it. And I think that the webinar really helps guide people through various stages. It's not all just like, the third part talks about revisionism, but it builds up to that, because for you to understand why revisionism is important, you need to find out, like, how can I structure my thinking to really understand what that is all about. So if we're framing what we view happened 83 years ago, which is 4 generations, in the 2024 mindset, we're not going to understand it. If we frame the universe and the creation story according to the laws of particle physics and the Einsteinian relativity theory and the Big Bang, we're not going to get there, because there are other newer, freer, and expansive forms of science and information out there. And that's what we're trying to expose here. And that's the door we're trying to open in the webinar. So I do hope people check it out, because I think it's something else. It's I think my most probably profound work, at least up to now.
Oh, I love that. Isn't it wonderful that the latest creation is the best creation? I mean, I love that about, also artistic and creative expansion is like when the latest work is the best work. As an artist, you go, oh, consciousness is just expanded. And I think what you just said is moving forward back to prime reality. That's kind of what I heard, my friend. Moving into prime reality.
Yes.
Frank, brother, always such a pleasure to do these shows together, The Naked Truth. Thank you for your tremendous work, your insights. And I would encourage people to hop over, links in the description. If you haven't seen it yet, check out the webinar. I'm on the tail end of it. It's absolutely 100% worth it. Frank's greatest work. So Frank, thank you, my brother. Give my best to Tanya as well. Have a blessed rest of your night, and Inspired Tribe, thank you so much for tuning in to the Naked Truth Show with Frank Jacob and myself. We'll see you again very, very soon. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll be back in just a little while.